Welcome to Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast with Eric Wolf and Ashi Vale, where we help you become a better industry professional by gaining inspiration from some of the world's most successful people in the food and beverage tourism industry. With each episode, we meet these leaders and examine their secrets of success. We reveal the obstacles and challenges they have faced, along with their solutions and triumphs, and give you ideas and inspirations for many of the same business issues that you may be facing as well. And now for today's episode. I'm Eric Wolf, and I'll be your host today for Episode 6 of Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast, and joining me today is co-host Ashi Vale. Today we'll be speaking with C.I.A. Gulliksson, a respected entrepreneur from Sweden who is focused on creative gastronomy. She is a self-taught chef and also the brain behind many ideas, businesses, and projects. C.I.A. uses food and culture as the tools to lead Food in Action, her company that launched a number of successful initiatives and sustainable brands that have catalyzed development for the Swedish region of Jämtland and put that area firmly on the map. C.I.A.'s companies are focused on providing enduring social and cultural capital to rural areas. What's more, they're debt-free and they're profitable. C.I.A. travels the world to inspire others towards creative action, development, and social transformation of their own local communities. Welcome, C.I.A.
Hey, thank you, Eric. So nice to be on the show.
So, C.I.A., in doing some research on you before the podcast today, I discovered that you call yourself a passionate potato. Where did that come from?
It probably comes from me being very down to earth and in one way limitless. Because if you are a potato, you can be so many things. You can be mashed potatoes, you can be au gratin. It's a very diverse and good metaphor. To be a good potato, you need to taste good. That's kind of like the first item. And then you need to also do good to the body you come into. And you need to do good from the earth you sprung in. So you really need to be like a good, clean and fair root crop. And I think that's a very good metaphor. And the potato actually stands for my core values, which is very much also the slow food values. But a potato is such a good metaphor because it has long threads in the earth and it spreads its seeds and make new potatoes. So if you're a good potato, you can actually spread your word and you can get others to transform your potato metaphor and make good change. And why passionate? Well, you can't be a spectator, then you will not change things. And you can't be a couch potato either. You have to be a passionate potato. So I just totally love the potato metaphor. And from where I come from, if someone calls you a potato, that you are like a potato, it's actually a compliment. It means you're very diverse.
Oh, okay. So that perhaps was the original start of it, and then you just took that idea and ran with it.
Yeah, and I kind of love the down-to-earth and the non-fuss thing about the potato. And you know what also is amazing with the potato? It is actually an immigrant to our regions. We consider the potato being our root crop, but it actually came here 400 years ago from Peru. And there's so many kinds of potatoes. There are 800 varieties just in the Nordics. And that also embraces another part that's important for me when I build my companies or my projects, and that's equality and diversity. We need everyone to succeed in this world.
Fia, speaking of being a passionate force behind change, can you tell us a little bit about how you were behind a few cities being designated a UNESCO creative city? And what does that mean? And what makes a city a UNESCO creative city?
I guess following my core value as being this passionate potato, I realized that to make change, there is some other parts in this recipe actually that needs to be looked at. It's not enough just to be a passionate potato. You have to make your priorities too. You have to prioritize organic and green health. And then when I looked around in my region, I realized we are sitting on this green gold. A lot of regions in the Nordics are actually. And sometimes it's not enough and you can't see that for yourself. Maybe you need someone from the outside to say that. And in my case, I discovered UNESCO and this amazing network that really works with 8 different standards of sustainability. And that was kind of the core values as I had as a potato. And I realized if my region or if other regions would adapt to these core values, they will save the planet we're staying on. That's a very normally I always kind of talk my full recipe to make an understanding. I think maybe that would be easier, because in my recipe I set the core values for myself, but then I looked up and I see to make sustainable change, you don't just work with yourself. If you work with your community, you need to influence others. And I saw the opportunity for my region to make change by joining this network. So to join the Creative Cities Network, the city really needs to sit down and think about their core values. They need to collect all the stakeholders of a region, because it's not just up to the government or up to the municipality to make change, or just to the university or just to an entrepreneur. We have to do this together. And you have to find these ways of having a partnership. And that's why I think becoming a creative city, you have to find all your stakeholders and you have to shape the vision and the goal of what you want to do and your core values.
Fia, I was one of the reviewers of your application on that UNESCO Creative Cities application. And you were one of the very first cities actually to apply and receive that. And I remember your application was incredible. It was extremely thorough. And you really demonstrated the support and involvement from everybody in your region, from the government to the farmers to the food service industry. How did you get consensus and buy-in from all of these disparate parties to support your application?
By being a very, very passionate potato, actually. You have to be very diverse, and you have to talk to everyone, and you have to collaborate, and you have to just paint the vision where you want to go, and kind of understand a bit about the rest of the world to understand what you're sitting on, the goal you're sitting on. And I think that it's very much just collaboration work. Finding someone like myself that is an innovation master and that really just has a strong vision and finds all of the ways to get there. And I've actually shaped a recipe around the passionate potato thing, and the first ingredient in my recipe is to set the core values, the passionate potato core values. The second part of it is to prioritize right. So you have to prioritize the long-term sustainable goals. That means the green aspects, the social and cultural aspects, and finally the money aspects. But most regions and most companies actually put the money aspect first, and then they can gain a very fast $20 bill, but they will not gain the $50 bill that takes longer to gain. I use a metaphor called the bucket theory to explain this, but it is about that you're much more sustainable if you focus on the green and the health environmental goals rather than the money. And the third ingredient in my recipe for sustainable change is you have to become like a C.I.A. agent. And I think to get all the forces united and to see the same vision, you have to do things an other way. You have to not use the door to go out of the room. You have to use the window. You have to create, imagine, act. So that's why I call it a C.I.A. agent. Create, imagine, act. You have to challenge, innovate, agitate. You have to collaborate, implement and assist. You have to have a lot of courage and intelligence and high awareness. You have to celebrate, inspire, and affiliate. So you have to find new ways around things. And if you can find people that are innovation masters, they always often have these three ingredients in their drive. They have the set core values, they know how to prioritize, and they find new ways around. So I was just happy to find some other people in my region kind of seeing the same vision. And then we prioritized and we worked as C.I.A. agents. And that's how it happened.
You were the catalyst, and then you went out to others to inspire and agitate, and then you built the momentum.
I think so. And also I found a new way for the municipality actually to act on something. I put in a proposal, as you can do here in Sweden in this democracy. If you're just a regular citizen, you can still make change. You can come with a proposal and then you get 10 minutes in front of the municipality to say your idea. And so what they said was, yes, we're going to apply. It sounds like a great idea, but no, we're not putting any money into it. And that's when you have to become creative. And you have to find other ways to get funds to reach your goals.
So when you said you needed some funds to reach your goals here, did it cost money to apply for this? Did you have to actually build a budget for the application?
No, what I actually did was doing a speech and someone at a conference where they were searching for solutions for sustainable change. And my idea to them was to hire someone and give them the vision where you want to go, but don't tell them the way to get there. So you have to feel trust in this process.
And can you share that vision for the city that you had with us?
Yeah, so actually after that performance, I got offered a half-time job for the municipality or for the region. And the only objective I had was to put the region on the map when it comes to creative gastronomy and sustainable gastronomy. And then they trusted me. So I think trust is a very crucial element also in changing things.
What makes the city such a center for gastronomy?
It's not actually the center. I would say it's the rural, the connection between the rural and the creative people that makes it as a creative city. And that was kind of also why I wanted to start my restaurant, the Jazz Kitchen that I started 5 years ago. It was because I couldn't see the signs of all the amazing gastronomy and the root crops and all the fantastic raw materials that we have here in the region on the local restaurants. And it was because they didn't have the prioritize. They didn't understand that prioritizing these quality products will drive business. But I am totally sure if you don't focus on sustainable change in this way when you do business in the future, you are actually mashed potato and no one wants to deal with you. Sometimes it's easier to show in action what you mean than just to talk about it. So that's kind of how I work. I understand how to reach the goals and I do it in action. So that's why I started the restaurant.
And it worked out.
Yes, and because then you can also become an inspiration for others. So now you can find at least 5 or 6 really nice places to eat in this town. But you couldn't actually when we were appointed.
That's fantastic, Fia. And congrats on winning Sweden's #1 Sustainable Restaurant Prize for Jazz Kitchen. That's really exciting.
I know. Yes, and we also won the White Guide Award actually.
And what is that? What is the White Guide Award? I'm not familiar with it.
It's kind of like the Michelin Guide, but only here in the Nordics, in Scandinavia. So we won one category, the caring restaurant.
So cool. Can I ask what inspired you to get into sustainability in the first place?
Of course, when I become a mom, I think. No, not of course. No, maybe this doesn't happen to everyone. But when I became a mom, I started realizing like, oh my God, I need to leave this world to my kids, the world that I borrowed from my parents. And I wanted to be in a better shape than I borrowed it from my parents. So I think that really inspired me to do change with business also, because I don't have just responsibility for myself. I have responsibility also for my future generations. And I didn't really see that before I became a mom, actually.
You said that was your aha moment in business when you became a parent.
Yeah, totally. And I also I don't see my life so separated. I don't see that I'm working now or I'm a private person now. I have one life and I don't really separate it. Of course, I take a lot of rests because you have to do that to be in balance. But work and life for me is the same. So what I am in my private life, I am in my business life and vice versa.
Fia, you said that one of the frustrations you see in business is the lack of awareness, and you were talking about focusing on a $20 win instead of the slower $50 win. Could you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
If we look at my region, actually, we've had this awareness and we have written the strategic documents. We have, they have the awareness and that this is a gain, but still they don't do it in action because they're still stuck in their systems. And that's very frustrating to see. And it's because you can't do things the way you've done it before if you want to run a holistic change. So I think it's mainly that. And I'm very frustrated because I think our region was in the front lead in the Nordic countries for many years, but we're kind of losing it now because they're not prioritizing, focusing on gastronomy as a driver for sustainable change. They're not doing it for real.
So what are they focusing on instead?
Sports. I guess it's to run a business is so many things you need to think about. So it's the health issues, it's infrastructure and all those things. But you have to see the market potential in gastronomic tourism, for instance. This is a tourist region. And if you don't understand the potential in this market, I think you don't understand where you should go. I mean, you can focus on adventure and nature, and that's also important for gastronomy, but still there's such a huge potential in food tourism at the moment. And for a region like ours, not to see that and use that in their communication is, for me, really, really strange.
Food and beverage are really, they're an important foundation for any kind of local or regional development because all visitors eat and drink, whether they're playing sports or engaged in adventure travel or visiting museums or shopping. Everyone needs to eat and drink, and so it's that sustainable foundation based on the food and drink of the area that I think can really drive the tourism and economic development.
Totally. And my last project I did in London for the Nordic Council and for 8 Nordic destinations. And they have all identified the foodie or the food tourist as the most interesting target group, since a foodie is 40% of the global tourist at the moment. And what is a foodie? It's a foodie, they care so much more about a place when they get there. They all often spend their money on more sustainable services and products, but they also spend a double amount of money per night. So you need maybe just half the amount of tourists to still gain the same money when it comes to the food and beverage side. Maybe the most important thing, they communicate up to 400% more than a regular tourist. So if you don't see the potential and you're sitting on the gold, as we are sitting on in this region, for me, it's really, really strange that you don't talk about what you have, and because it's what the world wants.
How have you successfully convinced some of these entrepreneurs to get into food tourism in your region?
I'm not sure if I have, but I of course I've had. If you look at Sweden in total, our region happened to have 40% of the communication value, even though we're just 20% of Sweden's surface and we are only 100,000 people out of 9 million. So it's not just me, it's a lot of entrepreneurs, and we're really lucky to be in the region of where Färviken is, for instance. Färviken is one of the world's best restaurants at the moment. So it's a lot of other drivers too for sustainable change that are communicating this. But if you don't understand that you need to form partnerships, you don't get there. And I worked really hard for many years to get Östersund into this Creative Cities network. And for 7 years, I was their ambassador. But once we kind of got the annual meeting to come here and we won this prestigious network to come to our town, they put me on the bench. Kind of because I think they don't see the potential in sustainable development. They see more, maybe they are part of a very interesting network and it's more just for the municipality, but it's not. If you look at what is Creative Cities Network, it is a lot about collaborating and you need to find ways of doing partnerships around that. I mean, that's what frustrates me, that they don't see the whole picture. They don't see why we're part of the Creative Cities Network. They see it as more as, oh, we have now this really nice medallion, and they don't do real action out of it.
It sounds like working with governments is well, it's challenging everywhere. And even in your local area, it sounds like there are some clear challenges in terms of what to do with that UNESCO designation.
Yeah, and I think maybe Creative Cities Network need to have, I mean, the intention is to get a partnership with all stakeholders, but how to do it is the real tricky part. And then you need to identify your innovation masters in each region to get that partnership working. And I think a bit we have failed here because we can't really see how we're working together on this, even though it's made a huge impact on this little town in one way. But I, as an entrepreneur, am working with building brands around sustainable food all the time, can see how much we could do with just a little bit of funding if we go together.
What would you do with funding if you got more funding?
I think the first thing you need to do is to build a communication platform, and you need to communicate in pictures, and you need to get everyone in looking at sharing the vision of your region to start communicating. And you can do that in various ways. You can invite influencers to your region, for instance, and you can have local hosts showing what they're most proud of. You can do it quite simply, but also packaging and all that you can do, but you don't need to. I don't think the regional funding should go to packaging like products. It's more about communicating what's actually there. So kind of like the application you got, but imagine that in a visual platform, and finding ways to get the grassroots also involved and let them become involved.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. So visually proving to the stakeholders what is of value.
Yeah, and kind of start your hashtag for the town, or like we did for Nordic Feast. We were 8 destinations from various different destinations, but we came together and we talked about our region, the Nordic region. And with an organic way of working, we reached more than 10 million people in less than 9 weeks. If you find the passion and the drive, and you find, your hashtag or your platform or your social media, you can inspire people to work on that. Kind of actually like the Me Too work this time. I mean, you found a vision that we want a more equal society where everyone is respected. It works exactly the same with when you want to promote your region or your brand. You have to find the people that share your core values, that want to prioritize the way you want to prioritize, and they are willing to work as C.I.A. agents. Create, imagine, act, new ways, and let them find the ways. Don't tell them how to get there. You have to, trust people in, if they're willing and they're sharing and they see this vision, they have to do it their way. And when you get that diversity, that's when you get the 800 different potatoes growing everywhere. But they will still feed people, and they still taste fantastic. Tell them the goal or the vision, and trust them. Because if they're passionate also, they will follow this vision no matter what, 24/7.
What if your innovation masters lack funding, or what if there's not one core leader, or what if there's fights among leaders, or what if they lose their momentum? How do you keep this alive?
You have to have a leadership that sees these things. You have to see a leadership when it's if there's prestige in the group, or if there is people doing things because they want power, not to have change. I mean, you have to be a smart leader, of course. And that's always how I built my companies. You have to work with appreciative leadership. That's exactly how I work. And that's why it's so strange for someone that's an innovation master, because you don't do things for your own gain. You do it for the holistic picture. And you get very shocked when you get in contact with people that have other kind of drivers than the holistic picture. They see themselves as, I'm the person being in the sun. I'm only using myself as a tool to reach my goals. If I can find another tool that can do what I do, I let that person come before me. I have no issues about me being in the center, but often you have to be the one plowing in the front to make it happen.
And then you build the team, and the team moves forward together.
Yeah, and Gästköket, my old restaurant, is actually an amazing example of how that worked, because I left the restaurant 3 years ago, and they're still like really, really doing well. They even developed, and they all adopted the philosophy on how to run a sustainable business. So even though I'm out of there, it's still really, really working, and we still have an amazing relationship. That's how you need to build the network, or to build a company or a brand.
Fia, looking back, was there anything that you might have done differently, or was there advice you wanted perhaps given yourself when you were a lot younger?
Oh, yeah, I guess being so passionate about changing things, you run into things very, very quickly. So maybe you need to step back, and you need to think about what you want out of this, maybe before you get into it. I don't know. What else would I say to myself? Not to be so hard on myself and be kind of happy about the achievements. But when you're so passionate about things, you are done with one project, and you immediately look at yourself and think, oh, I could have done this so much better. I could have done this. You have to just take that into the next projects.
Speaking of next and fun projects, I was reading about you being a host on the Swedish radio show, the Food and Cooking Show. Can you tell us a little bit about it, and maybe share a few fun moments while you were on the show as a host?
Oh my God. There were so many moments, because I've never talked to in radio, and I've never done any radio shows, and I'm not a journalist. And I was asked to do this show, and I thought, yeah, what the heck? So I think that trust in, if you want to change something, you have to step out of your comfort zone, maybe nearly every day, to move closer to your vision. So I said yes to this a very prestigious radio show that has been running for 20 years nearly in Sweden, and has nearly 1 million listeners every week. So I think that was quite crazy, and it could have gone totally wrong. But then I guess I would have just been back on square one. But what happened? The most fun thing, I think, I was invited to China, to Beijing, and I decided that having a Swedish cooking show doesn't just have to happen in Sweden. So I found Swedes everywhere in the world I did the show with. So this time I went and visited a Swedish guy in Beijing. And we were invited to the agriculture minister in China, and I had dinner with him. I thought a fun question would be to ask people, like, who would you like to host at your dinner table? It could be anyone. It could be a fictionist person. It could be someone that is not alive anymore. But in your imagination, who would you invite? And this guy looked at me and was like, we don't have a tradition in China to eat with dead people. He thought I was serious. Oh, that was very crazy.
Like you were going to just kind of create a seance and have the dead person's soul come to dinner with you, right?
Yeah. Oh, that was so crazy.
Fia, tell us a little bit about your latest project, the Nordic Feast, which you just finished up in London, and I understand it was a huge success. How did that all get started?
It started through the Nordic Ministry. They have 3 years ago, they decided they want to make a whole year somewhere in the world around Nordic culture and Nordic lifestyle. So South Bank Centre, the very prestigious institute around culture in London, won this bid. And for the whole year, they have a program called the Nordic Matters. So it's Nordic lifestyle, Nordic culture, music, design, film, anything you can imagine around Nordic lifestyle and creativity. During the same time, the visit organizations, so Visit Denmark and Visit Sweden, Visit Iceland, and so on, they decided to come together and make a food festival or a food event, showing off the really great food that we have in the Nordics. But also they understood that 40% of the UK market actually are foodies. And they also started to understand that food is a very good of communicating to get more tourists to travel to the Nordics. So I was actually handpicked by the Nordic Ministry and these visit organizations to do a creative Nordic feast. And I just came up with the idea, or they didn't call it a feast, they wanted it to be a food event. So my first initial idea was girls on fire and boys on the rise. So I wanted the best Nordic chefs, female chefs, to come together and cook on open fire. And this is quite not so normal. Mostly it's the guy doing the fire cooking and the girls doing the baking with the kids. But this time we wanted to change the roles because we had the best bakers from the Nordics actually baking with the children. Because this is a very much the Nordic lifestyle, that we are very equal. And I think the whole gastronomy sector cannot afford any longer to keep out the female vision, because then we cannot reach the goals. And that's such a big part of my core values also when I'm building companies, to have equality. And not for the right of everyone's right, it has to be 50-50 men and women. But that's how we reach our full potential. We're using both yin and yang. We're using both sides of the brain. The female vision is actually often much more sustainable when it comes to gastronomy. So then you have to show it. So that's the initial project was Girls on Fire, Boys on the Rise. And then it became the Great Nordic Feast, because the Englishmen thought it was, you couldn't say Boys on the Rise, and Girls on Fire could be understood something else. When I was commissioned, they wanted me to do this event at South Bank Centre. I went there, and it's a beautiful building. They host 5,300 events per year, but it was all like thick carpets and quite low ceilings, and I couldn't get a Nordic atmosphere feeling when I came into the building. So I went outside after 2 days, looking inside and out of this building, and I was about to say, no, sorry, I cannot do this in cultural Nordic event here in London because I can't find the space for it. And I came outside on the big festival terrace, and it was a windy, horrible day in London, very rainy and stormy. And I felt like, yes, this is home. This is where we can do Nordic in cultural event. I'm going to put 10 teepees here on this terrace, and we're going to make fires in the middle. And everyone said, no, that's not possible. But that's when I became the, create, imagine, act person. And I found the drawings, and I could see calculations that, yep, we can have tents here. And we found our way around it. Everyone said it was impossible to do it this way in the tents with the fire, but we actually managed to do it.
You were an innovation master.
Yeah, I guess. And I got some people to believe in me and trust in me, and it took a lot of convincing. And it was very, very, different for me to work with these people that are so used to run so many events, because they work really boxed in. They have, if you run 5,300 events, you have to have systems for everything. Systems for the policy, systems for communication. You cannot work so holistically. So it was very much a challenge for them to work with me, and very much a challenge for me to work with them. But we finally did it. And I think also that's why it became such a success, because we were so many stakeholders involved in this project. But we never lost the vision of making this great Nordic and cultural event.
Sounds like quite the feat, Fia, and congrats on the success of it.
Oh, I wish you can watch it. You can watch some of the footage on nordicfeast.co.uk. We have some films there, and it was fantastic to host. We hosted nearly 2,000 people for 3 days.
Wow.
And they came into these huge tents with the big open fires, and the chefs, cooking on fire in front of them. It was magnificent. It was amazing.
So what's next for you? What's next on the brain of the innovation master?
Yeah, I have actually 3 new projects, but 2 I'm working really hard with at the moment. And one is a new food product. If you don't want to eat meat, you want to eat more vegetables. A lot of products that we have on the market here are soya-based, high-processed soya. And you think you're doing a good thing by choosing this plant-based food instead of meat, but you're actually not. I mean, high-processed soya, it's not good for the planet, and it's not particularly good for the body. So we are making now a product, we call it flow food, because it gives you really a flow. We're using algae that are grown in the ocean outside Norway, together with some Asian crops, and we're using vegetables.
Is it on the market now? Can we buy it?
No, you can't buy it yet. We're still in the innovation stage, but we are actually getting it in February. It's going to be on the Horeca market, as we call it. So hotel restaurant business can buy it.
Got it.
And it's a food that's it's the key to the future, I think. Food product. So it's a mince, and we're making like a burger kind of type, and we're making a bite. But it's nothing processed with it. It's all clean Nordic vegetables, Asian grains, and of course algae. That's very healthy for you. So that's one of the projects. And then I'm building a new kind of restaurant. It's not a restaurant. It's not a hotel. It's not an Airbnb. It's not a co-working space. It's everything at the same time. In the ski resort. So it's also kind of like a new hotel. It's a new home, kind of, with food and sustainable
And
lifestyle.
what's that called?
Heim, which means home in my dialect. It's going to be called Heim. Heim, sweet Heim.
And your third project?
Yeah, and then I have a third project, but that's still secret, so I can't talk about it.
Okay.
Always have a secret up your sleeve.
And I kind of, in my imagination now, I believe that I can run all these 3 companies. We'll see how it goes. But then you really need to work with appreciative leadership. You need to find great co-workers on each project.
Fia, does your first company idea, the algae-based food product, does that have anything to do with getting the body healthier? I was reading that your favorite book right now is The Self-Healing Human, How to Get Healthier Than You Could Ever Imagine. Do those tie together somehow?
Yes, totally. And, I've been very focused on the environmental aspect of gastronomy for many, many years. The attraction of sustainable gastronomy. But just in the recent couple of years, I've been also looking at the microcosmos inside our system. And it works exactly the same as outside. It has to be good, clean, and fair products to build a good, clean, and fair body. So the Flow Food company, the products, they come from clean waters and really fertile soils within our Nordic ecosystem. And they are simply very smart and plant-based food. And as you know, there's a lot of really good documentaries and books around this, that it's so much healthier for us to eat much more plant-based food. It's ideal if you want to lose weight, if you want to stay lean, or keeping your mind sharp. I mean, it's really smart food, and it's very much more nutritious, and it takes a lot less energy for the planet. So I mean, it's a win-win.
It tastes good.
Oh, it has to taste good. I mean, that's the first thing. Anything in my projects, taste comes first. But it absolutely tastes amazing. And of course, you have to use spices. So we were making like a new commodity for restaurants and hotels to start with. But it is a perfect kind of food commodity, because the gluten that's in there is not very strong, because it's an ancient grain that's grown in Norway and in my region. And the root crop we use kind of ugly vegetables. So the vegetables that don't get on the market, we're using in our product. And we're using the algae, and the algae are amazing for your health. And we don't have a tradition to eat algae, but it's one of the most nutritious food you can eat on the planet. So the philosophy is the same as being a passionate potato, finding new ways around things and getting your priorities right. And in our product, it's a key product for sustainable future. You become a greater part of the ecosystem eating it. And what's most important is the preservation of clean waters and the clean waters. We really need to focus on clean waters for the future. And
well, you obviously didn't get to this phase by yourself. You worked with other people, just like you did with the Creative Cities application. Said that you have a favorite quote: "To get there spells together."
Yeah,
and I think that you're illustrating that here, that everything that you've achieved in your career, whether it's the Creative Cities application, the Yaz Shirkit kitchen, the restaurant, the Flow Food company, all of it's together with other people.
Yeah, you have to build a strong team to be able to achieve what you want. Because if you walk, there's another saying I love too: is walk alone and you can walk fast. Walk together and you can walk far. And you need to do that. So you need to just be like very enthusiastic about your vision, and then find people that share your core values. And the best thing to collaborate, I think, is not to have employees, it's to have partners. Maybe not just business partners, but forming teams with other companies and doing a project around it. And maybe that could be a company. And that's how we worked here. We are actually 4 companies that created Flow Food together. And I think I remember one inspiring moment for me was about 30 years ago. I heard Steve Jobs in a radio interview, and they asked him, like, how many employees will you have in 35 years? And he was scratching his head for a while, and then he said, in my dream, maybe 20. And the reporter looked at him, and I can't remember how many they had at the moment, but it was many, many thousands. And she couldn't understand what he was saying, but then she said, yeah, because I hope that all my employees will have their own company. And when we do projects, we form and shape teams, and everyone is responsible for their own things. And that's kind of how I look at it too when I do business, or if I have employees. I mean, I demand from them to be totally responsible for all their actions and their non-actions. I don't want to be their boss. And that's really much appreciative leadership. It's about reaching consensus of where you want to go, and then kind of trust that everyone fills out their uniform.
A great way to live, a great way to work as well.
Yeah, maybe. And also, I think I would have told myself too, my younger version, that trust my instincts, or if things starting to feel like funny, be transparent straight away. Say, this feels very strange for me, or trust your feelings or your heart.
You started the show calling yourself a passionate potato, and starting with that, really what you've done is to share your recipe for sustainable change. Would you summarize it again briefly for us?
No, I guess the recipe is that, set your core values, and that's the passionate potato. And the next part of the recipe, it's called the bucket theory, and it's how you prioritize. And this is not just how you prioritize when you do business, it's also in life. And, how can you stay healthy and how can you live a balanced life? It's actually the same recipe. If you're focusing and you are the passionate potato and you want to store it for the winter until the springtime and you want it to be a fresh, nice potato to eat for midsummer, you store it in a bucket in the cellar. And imagine the bucket is your life or your company and you're putting the potatoes in the bucket and they symbolizes your health or the green aspects of your company or your planet or your region or yourself. So you fill it, the bucket, it's totally full. You can still put in a lot of pebbles in the bucket. And that's quite good because if you have pebbles between the potatoes, that will keep them away from each other a bit. It symbolizes social and economic aspect of your life. And then you also fill the bucket with a lot of sand. And the sand symbolizes the economic aspect. And the sand is needed there to keep the moisture away. So all these components are important to store the potatoes in the earth cellar to spring. But if you pack the bucket in a different way, if you prioritize the sand first and then the pebbles and then you put the potatoes in, not all the potatoes can fit. And this is exactly the same metaphor I'm using in my company. So that's why I call it the bucket theory and how you prioritize right. And then the third part of the recipe is to be a C.I.A. agent. You have to create imagination. You have to find new ways around. If someone says, no, we can't do this, you have to ask why. And then you have to find ways around it. Like South Bank Center said, no way, we've never had one thing except for tables and chairs on the terrace. You cannot put tents that weigh 250 tons up here. And I'm like, why not? And then I looked at the plans and they admitted 80 tons per square meter. So of course we could put tents up there. But then the next question was, how are we going to put the tents up there? It's a terrace. And I'm like, okay, we get a crane in. But how are we going to get a crane in? It's a road there. Oh, well, we can block the road. Well, how can we block the road? Yeah, well, we have to ask the municipality. We can block one lane for 4 hours. And they said yes. So even though people say, no, we haven't done this, you have to be persistent and you have to find new ways around it. So that's the third part.
Sophia, you have so many great ideas and so much wonderful experience to share. We really appreciate your sharing your insight, your experience, and your passion with our listeners here on Eat Well, Travel Better. Thank you, Fia.
Thank you so much for listening. It was really fun.
That's all for this episode of Eat Well, Travel Better, the business of food travel, produced by the World Food Travel Association. Join us next time where we learn from some of the world's most successful people in the food and beverage tourism industry. We'll meet these leaders and examine their secrets of success. We reveal the obstacles and challenges they have faced, along with their solutions and triumphs, and give you ideas and inspirations for many of the same business issues that you may be facing as well. Thank you for joining us today, and until next time, eat well and travel better.